Iran has built hardened shelters for new fighter jets at the Hamadan Air Base, which are expected to host Russia's Su-35 fighters. Today's missile launches, by the way, were conducted from IRGC aerospace force bases that Israel had previously claimed were put out of service during the 12-day war. As you probably know, we covered this yesterday, Israel is now, ramping up the propaganda saying they need another war on Iran. And Netanyahu is making this 5th trip to the United States to meet with Trump during his first year in his second term in office to make the case that, oh my God, we really need, I'm going to show you these attack plans. We really need to have another war with Iran. And this has been documented by Haaretz, by Times of Israel, by Israeli Channel 14. They're saying that Iran's hypersonics now pose such a severe threat that we have to go to war again. Because initially it was the nuclear program. They didn't wipe out the nuclear program, as we all know, but now the claim is, well, Iran might rebuild their nuclear program, and the hypersonics pose a threat. So we have to take out, remember when they were saying that they had like intercontinental ballistic missiles? Now they're saying that it's just like hypersonic missiles, shorter medium range missiles. Well, they're saying, oh, the hypersonic missiles, we have to do something about that because look at how much they crushed us in the first 12-day war. Okay. So Netanyahu's going all the way to the United States to present these plans and to ask again. Now, raise your hand if you find this a little bit weird. Raise your hand if you feel as though this is like, well, why does he have to go all the way to the United States? There's plenty of very high level, very confidential, very secure intelligence sharing that happens between the United States and Israel, and war planning and actual war mobilization that we've witnessed over the past year that happened in coordination between the U.S. and Israel, between the DOD and the IDF, between the CIA and between Mossad, that take place all the time, and it does not require Netanyahu going to the United States, okay? Why does he have to go to the United States? I don't know, but he's apparently going to the United States, and I might have an idea as to why. Because now the Israeli media and the U.S. media is parroting this. They're all saying Trump will not approve large-scale Israeli attacks on Iran. He doesn't want it. Trump is a peacemaker. He doesn't want it. I know. He's been airstriking Somalia 100 some odd times. I know they just sent $800 million to Ukraine this week. They're still doing intel sharing with the Ukrainian military. I know he sent, $11 billion in military funds to Taiwan to provoke war with China over the next few years. I know he already approved the first strikes on Iran. He bombed Yemen. He's got the entire, U.S. Navy practically and all these fighter jets right off the coast of Venezuela. I know. But he really doesn't want the war with Iran. He really doesn't want that. Could be true. But also it very much and probably is something else. I don't believe that. Here's the thing. Even if Trump himself, you catch him on a good day because his opinion changes every other day. Even if Trump didn't want the war on Tuesday, he might want the war on Wednesday. But the CIA, the DOD, the State Department, the deep state, they want the war against Iran every day of the week. They want the war against Yemen, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, China, every single day of the week. Okay? That's ultimately who the decision maker in the Oval Office is, despite that Trump is in charge. But they're saying this. Despite that, Israel has prepared a comprehensive intelligence dossier to convince Trump on new Iran strikes. The paper contains Iran's ongoing efforts to rebuild its nuclear and ballistic programs and efforts to arm its proxy groups. That's from Israel Hayom. Israel warned the U.S. that an ongoing missile exercise and other unusual movements by Iran, especially the IRGC, could be preparations for an attack against Israel. Okay. Well, this is what Trump said. You might not remember before he was inaugurated, speaking with Patrick Bet-David about how he doesn't want war in Iran. We can't get totally involved, but he doesn't want Iran to have nukes. You might remember this.
Tanks running around.
What's going to happen to Iran with you by the end of your administration? I'm not asking.
I would like to see Iran be very successful. The only thing is they can't have a nuclear weapon.
Are you okay with the same administration and way of governing states, or Would you like to see it go back to the 70s when Shahs was running it and Iran was one
Patrick Bet-David's literally probably the dumbest guy on the internet.
of the top 3 countries
Look,
in tourism?
We can't get totally involved in all that. You know, I mean,
Right.
we can't run ourselves. Let's face it.
Sure.
Patrick, we can't run
You
ourselves.
put sanctions, that's going to, they don't have, the people are going to turn and flip on them. It's not going to be a,
The people are going to turn and flip. I promise. My buddy, Pahlavi, the grandson or whatever, he's going to come back. The people want him. Anyways, the only substantive thing here that Trump really said was that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. He didn't say they can't have hypersonics. And really, he already violated that one statement that he did make when he said that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, because we all know Iran was not pursuing a nuclear weapon at the time in which the U.S. was striking them. They were actually pursuing negotiations with the U.S., and they were about to meet in Oman for another round, 7th round of negotiations or whatever. So I don't believe Trump when he says this, okay? Now, Brian Berletic, everyone should go follow Brian Berletic, New Atlas on YouTube and on Twitter, Substack, everywhere. He writes in the Beijing Review quite often. He wrote this, and I think he makes quite the convincing argument, okay? The U.S. is using Israel for plausible deniability. Again, Western media claims Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will brief President Trump on planned Israeli strikes on Iran. This is a fiction. No strikes can take place without full use of U.S. ISR and other necessary capabilities, including air and missile defense and aerial refueling, and thus without full U.S. planning and support. Reality: Israel is a U.S. proxy like Ukraine and will be used again to strike at and start a conflict the U.S. wants to distance itself from, despite engineering and approving of, just as it did earlier this year, and as U.S. policy papers have explained since as early as 2009. Brookings in 2009 laid out in detail how Israel will be used to start, fight, and absorb the consequences of a U.S.-engineered war with Iran, while granting the U.S. the ability to avoid all or most of the blame and retaliation from Iran. Earlier this year, that is precisely what took place, and people are still falling for this admitted, documented, and repetitive game. So you understand that U.S. military think tanks have been putting out all these policy papers saying that, yeah, this has been the goal all along. U.S. operates this whole thing. Israel takes the blame for it, and the U.S. gets off the hook. No one gets mad, really fundamentally, at the U.S. It's all anger directed towards Israel. The Brookings paper at one point literally says the United States would encourage and perhaps even assist the Israelis in conducting the strikes themselves, in the expectation that both international criticism and Iranian retaliation would be deflected away from the United States and onto Israel. This tiresome game works over and over again because people in general are emotional and thus easily manipulated, despite signed and dated papers admitting this is the game and having already employed it just earlier this year because of the obsession people have with Israel. They are willing to believe U.S. propaganda, allowing it to pass all blame off on Israel and depict the U.S. as caught up in the middle of someone else's fight instead of waging yet another proxy war against another obstruction to U.S. primacy. The U.S. is burden sharing in the Middle East, just as it openly is doing in both Europe and the Asia Pacific. Ukraine and the EU are America's European proxies, Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. Its proxies in the Asia Pacific, Israel, Turkey, and the Persian Gulf states. Its proxies in the Middle East. Zoom out, and it is abundantly obvious. Now, everyone was talking so much about this 2025 national security plan, or whatever they called it, the National Security Agenda. What is the official name of that document? National Security Strategy of 2025. So I guess they release this every year, every few years or something. And everyone's like, oh my God, this shows that the U.S. is like actually concerned only the Western Hemisphere. No one read the document. No one actually read the document. What people were doing was they were nitpicking certain quotes and saying, well, the U.S. understands that it has a lot of problems at home. The U.S. understands that it should be more focused directly intervening in conflicts in the Western Hemisphere. But as for the broader geopolitical scale of China and Russia, Iran, the quote-unquote hostile actors, the major hostile actors against the U.S. across the world, it very clearly identifies those hostile actors in Europe, in Asia, in the Asia Pacific, right? In the Middle East. It labels Iran, it labels Russia, China, so on and so forth. And the ideas are quite simple. All right. In the 2025 National Security Strategy, all it simply says is, as far as direct involvement goes, yes, we should limit as much as possible elsewhere in the world. But when we look at what happened in Ukraine, kind of went according to plan insofar as provoking the conflict with Russia. That was the goal, to provoke a conflict with Russia, and they succeeded in that. Now, has the war gone according to plan? Well, that really depends on what you think that the plan was. I mean, if the plan was simply to draw Russia into a conflict and to make it last as long as possible, right? In an attempt to weaken Russia as much as possible, then I guess they have succeeded in some fronts. Obviously, Russia is not weak today. Their manufacturing sector is the strongest that it's been since the Soviet Union. Their military technology is bar none. I mean, it is of the highest quality, and really their Budapest missile, the Poseidon missiles, I mean, it's the best in the world. You look at their military readiness, the combat experience that they've gained. Okay, they're very strong. They performed well. You look at their economy, beaten the odds. It has now risen to the fourth largest economy in the world, GDP purchasing power parity. It surpassed Japan. And I mean, it's had growth since the start of the SMO. So in some ways, yes, in some ways, no, if we're being real. Well, they simply looked at that and they said, well, let's mirror the same thing in China. Let's do this burden sharing network against the Chinese. Let's do this burden sharing network against the Iranians. Let's try to act as though we're chill with the Chinese. We'll send Trump over there. We'll make some goodwill deals. We'll have Marco Rubio say some nice things about the Chinese. Pete Hegseth will go out and say, we can't defeat China because China is so... But no one's talking about defeating China. We're talking about dragging China down as much as possible. That's what they're doing to Russia. Do we really think they thought they were going to be able to defeat Russia? No. Do I think their plan has backfired? Yes. But some aspects of the goal, forcing Zelensky to provoke this conflict, I mean, they were successful. And right now, the blame is on Ukraine and Europe. The blame is not being placed on the U.S., despite the fact that the U.S. sent $800 million to Ukraine last week. The U.S. is still doing intelligence sharing for Ukraine. Every single missile they fire, at least the bigger missiles, they need U.S. coordinates. They need U.S. satellite. They need Elon Musk's, the whatever he calls it, the Starlink, the military Starlink variant for their naval drones that they strike Odessa with. Right? They still are using the U.S., but the U.S. is not getting the blame right now. Coming back to Iran, same thing. Israel's taking all the blame. Without the media stories, Trump doesn't want this. Trump doesn't want this, but without Trump, without the U.S., without the DOD, without the CIA, without the State Department, without all of this, without Tulsi Gabbard at DNI greenlighting this in a Colin Powell 2.0 moment, what was Israel going to do? They weren't going to do squat. This is a U.S. plan that they are saying we're not going to take accountability for. Okay, that's all it is. And it seems to be working. Okay, so now you have Lindsey Graham going out. You know, of course, he's the warmonger. He's like the canary in the coal mine. He's saying it's time for war in Iran.
Elevating the risk that the ballistic missiles present to Israel and eventually to the region. We need to replenish your supply of air defense capability, but we cannot allow Iran to get back in the ballistic missile production business that could overwhelm Iron Dome.
Like 2 weeks after the 12-day war came to an end, Iran unveiled this several massive new underground ballistic hypersonic missile cities, as they call them. They're not just like storage facilities. They call them underground cities because they have thousands and thousands of missiles in these cities, thousands and thousands of these Shahed drones. So we can't allow Iran to get back in the hypersonic missile business. We have to do some. Well, they're already in the business. They're already winning the business. They've got the biggest business. They've got the strongest business. And today, Iran was launching large-scale military exercises. They were launching ballistic missiles left and right from western and central Iran. That was taking place today. I've got another video I can show you right here. or some photos, I guess I can show you right here. There's some photos of it, the ballistic missiles being fired. Today's missile launches, by the way, were conducted from IRGC aerospace force bases that Israel had previously claimed were put out of service during the 12-day war. And last but not least, we've got the mother of all stories to trigger a new war. Iran has built hardened shelters for new fighter jets at the Hamadan Air Base, which are expected to host Russia's Su-35 fighters. Well, hate to be that guy that said I got something right, but I did get that right. A lot of people were covering the fact that after the 12-day war, there was a bunch of Russian cargo jets that were coming into Iran. Everyone was saying, what is this? What is this? S-400, S-5, what is this? And I came out and I said, I think that these are, some of you will remember, it was like right when we first started our show, we did some segments on this. Everyone was asking, what were those planes? What were they shipping? What were those cargo jets? And I said, I don't think that they were, maybe they were S-400s, maybe they were who knows what. But I think the main thing that is being delivered to Iran right now, probably the hardware needed for the infrastructure to house these Su-35 fighter jets, that will be coming in short order. Because we have seen videos of the Iranian fighter jet pilots training in Russia. We know that Iran obviously needs the state-of-the-art hardened shelters and infrastructure for these Su-35s. And we know, based on leaked invoices, that they're supposed to get these Su-35s in 2026. But now that process is probably being sped up as much as possible, so it could be as much as early 2026. So we were correct again. That's what's happening. I also had a conversation on legitimate targets today. It is not out yet. It has not been published. And frankly, I don't know if I can publish it on YouTube. Might have to be just for Twitter, just for Rumble. But I had an interview today with Victor Bout, who was the, alleged Russian arms trafficker that was in prison in the United States, and you might remember there was the Brittany Griner deal where we traded Brittany Griner, who was being held in a Russian prison, the NBA basketball player who brought illicit narcotics into Russia. She was traded for the Russian prisoner. Victor Bout was his name. And I interviewed him today. And while I asked him about this, I said, what do you, we're talking about the Iran war, we're talking about Venezuela, what capabilities Venezuela has in terms of air defenses, and I specifically brought up Su-35s in Iran. Let's just say we got confirmation on that one, that things are happening. Things are happening, but you're going to have to watch the full episode to see what he actually said. So that's what's going on. I don't believe that Trump is earnestly opposed to this. And if he is, on the off chance, 50% of the time, because we know he flips the script so often, I guarantee you 1,000% that everyone around Trump is gun-ho for another war in Iran. And this is all palace intrigue. This is all political theater. It's a bunch of BS. And it's to make you believe and make as many gullible, naive people in the world believe that the U.S. really doesn't want this. And it's all Israel. Ukraine, they were doing their own thing. The U.S. had really nothing to do with it. It was totally not a whole thing that they planned out since like 2004. Okay, this was totally not a whole thing they planned out years in advance. Just in the same way that, these Taiwanese, they're just got minds of their own. It's not like the U.S. is training all these armed separatists and giving them billions and billions and billions of dollars and fomenting all this propaganda and warmongering fear. It's totally not like it's all the U.S., right? Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.